Hello everybody, I'm Aaron Simmons. This is Philosophy for Where We Find Ourselves, April 24th, 2020. Today is the second in a two-part series that I'm doing thinking through some of the problematic theological claims that have recently been made by some segments in the Christian community in response to the pandemic. Yesterday, we talked about what I called the heresy of invulnerability. Today, I want to talk about the second of these two problematic theological ideas, and that is predeterministic conceptions of sovereignty. Now, that's a mouthful. What I mean by this is that when some Christians and some religious people in general talk about everything happens for a reason, God's in control, I think that this can be dangerously close to abdicating human responsibility for the world in which we live. I think that again today, we can think through this idea by reference to Madeleine L'Engle. We drew on her yesterday to talk about how grown-ups learn to be vulnerable. Today, I want to read you another passage from her work, Walking on Water, where she talks about the importance of free will, and in particular, the way that freedom links up with creativity in ways that might actually enable divine action in more profound ways in our lives and in our world. I think that her words here speak remarkably to our condition in the pandemic. Let me read this to you. Was it predetermined that Milton go blind in order to write Paradise Lost? That Beethoven go deaf to write the Ninth Symphony? That these artists grew through affliction is undeniable, but that this affliction was planned? No. Everything in me rebels. I cannot live in a world where everything is predetermined, an ant world in which there is no element of choice. I do believe that we all have a share in the writing of our own story. We do make a decision at the crossroads. Milton could have retreated into passive blindness and self-pity instead of trying the patience of his three dutiful daughters and any visiting friend by insisting that they write down what he dictated. Beethoven could have remained in the gloom of silence instead of forging the glorious sounds which he could never hear except in his artist's imagination. Sometimes the very impetus of overcoming obstacles results in a surge of creativity. It is in our responses that we are given the gift of helping God write our story. In light of L'Engle's words, it's important to recognize that when we attribute to God everything that happens as part of the divine will, we actually abdicate our responsibility to work for social justice, to care for the widow, the orphan, and the stranger, to love our neighbor, and to find ways to become creative in response to crisis. I do believe that God is working with us to bring about divine intentions. I do not believe that God's will is that tens of thousands of people die in the midst of this pandemic just so some greater good could be achieved. I reject the conception of divine sovereignty that is nested in the king who is in absolute control, and instead recommend that we rethink sovereignty in light of traditions like Open Theism that invite us to recognize sovereignty is actually nested in divine humility. Everything does happen for a reason, but those reasons might be we have failed to do what we could have. May we rise to this challenge and not be the reason that more people die, not be the reason that more people suffer, and be the reason participating with God to bring about the world marked by all of those attributes that Jesus manifests in his own life: humility, hospitality, gratitude, and engagement. May justice roll down like waters. May we be the people who are able to recognize God may have called us to open the floodgates. I'll see you tomorrow, unless a piano falls on our heads.